Difficult people don't take your peace. You offer it up when you react. Often, they don't even need to raise their voice. A glance, a tone, a subtle remark. And suddenly, you're second-guessing yourself, rehearsing what you should have said, or shrinking into silence. But here's the quiet truth. You don't need sharper arguments. You don't need to win the conversation. What you need is emotional discipline. Stillness, boundaries, not built from anger, but from clarity. In this video, we'll explore how to meet difficult people with composure, not combat. How to hold your energy with grace. How to set boundaries without drama. And how to reclaim your peace, not by changing them, but by anchoring yourself. High performance isn't about managing other people. It's about mastering yourself, especially when things get hard. When someone tries to pull you into their chaos and you remain steady, that's not weakness. That's real strength. Here's a perspective shift that changes everything. The most difficult people in your life don't need to change for your life to improve. Because the power to shift your experience doesn't start with them. It starts with you. Not because you're the problem, but because you are the solution. Most of us fall into the same cycle. If they'd stop interrupting, if she'd stop criticizing, if he'd calm down, then I'd be fine. But that's not strength. That's emotional dependence. It places your peace in someone else's hands and hopes they won't drop it. The Stoics taught us something different. You can't control how people act, but you can decide who you become in response. That's more powerful than any apology, any explanation, any validation you may never receive. Difficult people aren't a project to fix. They're a mirror that reveals where you still feel unstable. When someone disrespects you, interrupts you, or twists your words, your instinct may be to argue, to defend, to chase being understood. But in doing so, you hand over your emotional state to their behavior. The Stoic path is different. You learn to hold your ground, not with force, but with presence. Not to fix them, but to remain whole in their presence. Try this mindset instead. When someone is difficult, pause and ask, what is this moment inviting me to become? Am I being pulled toward argument, or invited to grow in stillness, to practice patience, restraint, and self-command? Because the truth is, difficult people offer a hidden gift, the opportunity to strengthen what's already within you. Emotional intelligence begins with ownership. You may not choose your first reaction, but you always shape your second one. Let's say someone criticizes you unfairly. Old patterns might lead you to react or shut down. But with self-mastery, you pause, you breathe, you choose curiosity over conflict. Is that truly how you see it? Or are you upset right now? No defensiveness, no blame, just presence. That's not just emotional maturity. That's composure. That's inner leadership. Think of it like standing in a storm. You don't shout at the wind. You ground yourself. You steady your breath. You endure, not because the wind calmed, but because you did. Difficult people are storms, but storms pass, and your peace was never theirs to manage. So here's your reminder. You don't need to change them to protect your energy. You don't need to fix the room to restore your center. You don't need anyone's permission to remain calm. You only need to choose. I will not let someone else's chaos decide who I become. That's not detachment. That's wisdom. That's not passivity. That's power. Because you don't control them. You only ever control you. And from that place, no difficult person can take away the peace you never gave them in the first place. First, let them be who they are. Your task isn't to change them. Your task is to choose who you become in their presence. We often mistake volume for strength. The one who speaks louder, interrupts more, or dominates the room may seem powerful. But real strength doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't seek control. It practices it inwardly. Difficult people aren't difficult because they're strong. More often, it's the opposite. Their intensity is not confidence. It's a form of camouflage. Their aggression is not dominance. It's a shield. Their criticism and volatility are not strength. They're signs of an inner world that feels unsettled. As Epictetus said, "No one is free who is not master of himself." And many who appear forceful are not masters. They are reactors. And that doesn't make them powerful. It makes them vulnerable. Behind most difficult behavior is unprocessed fear. Let's look closer. When someone interrupts constantly, it's often driven by the fear of not being heard. The fear that silence means invisibility. When someone criticizes often, it may reflect their own insecurity, a fragile self-worth masked by control. And when someone shuts down or explodes over something small, what you're witnessing isn't strength. It's emotional immaturity struggling to manage itself. That's not power. That's dependency. They need your emotional response to feel grounded. They draw from your energy when they've lost connection to their own. This doesn't excuse the behavior, but understanding it allows you to detach from it. You stop personalizing. You start observing. And that shift from reaction to observation is where real strength begins. There's a term in psychology called projection. It means someone attributes their own inner conflict to the people around them. They feel unheard, so they accuse you of not listening. They feel overlooked, so they say you're selfish. They feel guilt, so they guilt trip you first. Recognizing this won't make the behavior go away, but it will give you emotional clarity. Because once you understand that their reaction is more about them than you reclaim the space to respond wisely, or not at all. This is where Stoic wisdom diverges from ordinary advice. Where others see enemies, the Stoic sees teachers. So when a difficult person enters your life, pause and ask, what are they helping me strengthen? Is it patience, assertiveness, strategic silence, boundary setting? They're not here to destroy your peace. They're revealing where it's still fragile, so you can fortify it. In that way, difficult people become mirrors, not enemies. They show you the places where you still chase approval, still feel the need to explain yourself, still take the bait. And when you see that, you no longer resent them. You simply stop offering the reaction they rely on. True strength is often quiet. Think of the most grounded people you know. They don't shout. They don't react impulsively. They don't seek control over others, because they've cultivated it within. They listen more than they speak. They respond with clarity, not chaos. They don't need validation to feel steady. Their power lives in restraint, not resistance. This is leadership, not the kind that dominates, but the kind that endures. Modern Stoic insight reminds us, difficult people may try to draw you into their unrest, but once you recognize that their behavior is more about internal struggle than outward strength, you stop feeling threatened. You begin to see the test, a test of your emotional discipline, your self-respect, your stillness. Final thought for this chapter. Don't confuse intensity with authority. Don't mistake loudness for clarity. And don't assume the most difficult person in the room is the most powerful. Often, they're the most fragile. You don't need to defeat them. You only need to stop absorbing what isn't yours. Let their chaos reveal itself while you remain grounded. Because the moment you react, you've already surrendered your peace. Not because you were wrong, but because you gave them access to something they didn't earn, your inner world. Choose instead to keep that space sacred. That's how you rise. It's not the emotion that gives others power over you. It's when you let them decide how you feel, when you speak, and what you focus on. If you're easily provoked, you're easily guided. And if someone can guide your emotions, they can guide your choices. Modern Stoic insight. Reacting quickly may feel powerful. You shut them down. You speak up. You show you won't tolerate disrespect. But here's the truth. The moment you react without reflection, you've already handed over control. The difference between reaction and response is the difference between chaos and clarity. Reaction is emotional. It's impulsive. It's fueled by tension and adrenaline. Response is steady. It's thoughtful. It's rooted in self-respect and inner stability. Reaction comes from the body, from fight, flight, or freeze. Response comes from the mind, from breath, pause, and perspective. And that pause, however small, is where your dignity lives. You never truly win by reacting first, because the first reaction is rarely the right one. Real composure is more powerful than confrontation. Let's walk through a common scenario. You're in a tense meeting. Someone says, "Well, maybe if you paid more attention, this wouldn't have happened." You might fire back instantly. "Excuse me? I've been doing your job for you for weeks." But what does that do? It escalates. Now both of you are defending, deflecting, reacting. Now it's no longer about the issue, it's about the emotion. The stoic version of you pauses. You take a breath, make eye contact, wait 2 seconds, let the silence stretch just a little, then calmly say, "That's not accurate." I'll respond once I've gathered my thoughts. That's presence. That's self-command. You stayed in rhythm. You kept your tone. And more importantly, you kept your power. Emotional intelligence isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about taking ownership of it. When you react instantly, you surrender authorship. You let someone else write your emotional script. But when you pause, even for just a moment, you reclaim authorship. You remind yourself, I am not my anger. I am not my defensiveness. I am not here to perform someone else's story. Marcus Aurelius said, "You shouldn't give circumstances the power to rouse anger, for they don't care." People may say hurtful things, not because it's true, but because it gets a reaction. When you flinch, defend, or explode, they've succeeded. But when you stay grounded, breathe, and choose your next move, they lose access. You are not programmable. You are self-governed. And in a world full of noise, calm becomes a quiet form of power. Use it wisely. Use it precisely. Because anyone can react. Anyone can raise their voice or speak over others. But calm is earned. Calm is trained. Calm takes discipline. And in moments that matter, it's calm that leads. Calm is not passive. It's proof of inner structure. The kind that doesn't waver when tested. The kind that isn't shaken by cheap words or emotional noise. There's an old line by George Bernard Shaw. Never wrestle with pigs. You both get dirty, and the pig likes it. It's not just a quote. It's a reminder. Not every battle is worth stepping into. Not every comment deserves your energy. When you stop reacting by default, you stop walking into traps designed to pull you out of character. Final thought for this chapter. You don't win by being louder. You win by being wiser. The strongest person in the room isn't the one who dominates the conversation. It's the one who doesn't let anyone dominate their state of mind. So next time someone comes at you fast, harsh, or emotionally charged, let them. Let them show their hand. Let them burn their fuel. Let them reveal their own volatility. And then, when you're ready, respond. Not with reactivity, but with clarity, calm, and complete self-command. That's how you lead. Not with the first word, but with the right one, delivered with stillness. Silence isn't weakness. It's not avoidance. It's not submission. Silence is strategy. And when used wisely, it becomes one of the most powerful tools in emotional intelligence. You don't need to match their tone. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to fill the air just because they're uncomfortable in the quiet. Sometimes the most commanding presence in the room is the one who simply doesn't react. Why silence works, both psychologically and philosophically. People who lack emotional maturity expect noise. They expect a pushback. They want you to interrupt, defend, escalate, because once you do, they get to steer the moment. But when you respond with silence, two things happen. You interrupt the cycle of escalation before it begins. You create space for them to face their own discomfort without using you as a distraction. The Stoics knew this well. Zeno of Citium once said, "Better to trip with the feet than with the tongue." Silence isn't ignoring. It's refusing to be pulled into emotional games. It's a quiet way of saying, "I heard you. I'm just not playing." And that throws people off, especially those used to controlling through chaos. Let's say someone throws a passive-aggressive jab. "Wow, you're always so sensitive." Or worse, "Calm down, you're being dramatic." What they want is a reaction, because if you react, they get proof. "See? You are dramatic." But if you stay still, just hold eye contact, breathe, let the silence stretch. Now they're the one who feels exposed. Now they're the one who feels unsure. And the best part, you didn't have to defend, explain, or lower yourself. That's Stoic control in action. Silence is not the absence of power. It's the presence of mastery. Most people rush to fill silence because they fear what it reveals. They over-explain, over-talk, overcompensate. But a Stoic doesn't fear silence. They use it. Silence becomes the pause that resets the tone, the breath that keeps you grounded, the space that returns you to your center. So the next time someone insults you, pause. When someone gaslights you, pause. When someone pressures you for a quick answer, pause. Not to avoid, but to reset, to remember. You set the tempo, not them. A practical example. You're at a family dinner. Someone says, "Still single, huh?" Getting a little late, isn't it? Old habits might tempt you to joke, defend, or fire back. But the Stoic approach? You pause. You breathe. You look at them, not with hostility, but with stillness. You say nothing. Let the silence do the heavy lifting. Let them feel the weight of their own words. Because sometimes the most graceful answer is the one unspoken. That's emotional discipline. That's self-respect. That's power. Quiet, calm, unshakable. Option A. You defend yourself. "Wow, what a thing to say. Why do you even care?" Now you're on their level, reactive, pulled in. Option B. You laugh it off. But it lingers. It stings a little, even if you pretend it doesn't. Option C. You pause. Look at them, steady, relaxed. Say nothing. Then return to your meal, unshaken, calm, clear. What happens next? They fidget, they mumble, they try to recover. Because you didn't give them what they were looking for, your emotional energy. You just communicated something far more powerful than words ever could. That comment doesn't even register on my radar of relevance. Silence is powerful when used with presence. But let's be clear, silence isn't about stonewalling. It's not emotional punishment. It's not superiority or withdrawal. It's intention. Silence becomes powerful only when it's paired with grounded awareness. It means you're choosing your moment, practicing restraint, leading by example, and most importantly, refusing to let someone else dictate your emotional rhythm. Because sometimes the clearest message is, "I have nothing to prove and no need to perform." That's not passivity. That's high-performance composure in action. Final thought for this chapter. Not every comment deserves your response. Not every person deserves your reaction. But your silence, everyone notices it, especially those who were counting on your chaos. Silence is not avoidance. It's clarity. It's strength under pressure. It's how the Stoic wins, not by overpowering others, but by refusing to be baited into emotional games. So the next time someone tries to pull you into their storm, say nothing. Let their chaos echo into stillness until it loses momentum, until it collapses under its own weight. That's what it means to use your inner peace as your greatest shield. You don't win difficult conversations by being the loudest voice in the room. You win by being the clearest thinker. And clarity doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from asking the right questions at the right time. Because a question calmly asked is a sword quietly unsheathed. Stoic Insight 101. While most people burn energy trying to prove a point or protect an ego, the Stoic takes a different path. They observe, they ask, they let the moment reveal itself. Why questions work. When someone is passive-aggressive, rude, or manipulative, your first impulse may be to call them out. But here's the shift. If you confront them, they'll defend themselves. If you ask them, they'll often reveal themselves. Let's say someone says, "I just don't think you're capable of leading this project." Instead of reacting, try this. "That's interesting. What specifically makes you say that?" You didn't attack. You didn't retreat. You invited clarity. And now the weight is on them to explain, not on you to defend. Often they can't, because their comment wasn't built on truth. It was built on assumption, emotion, or control. And now, gently, you've exposed that. Strategic questions that shift the power dynamic. Every Stoic should carry a few of these in their back pocket. What do you mean by that? Use when someone speaks vaguely or passive-aggressively. It invites clarity. When someone uses vague or passive-aggressive language, ask, "What do you mean by that?" It gently invites clarity, and many people can't provide it. Can you help me understand what your goal is here? Perfect for moments when tone feels manipulative. This question doesn't accuse. It inquires, and in doing so, it asks them to own their intent without creating conflict. What outcome are you hoping for? A powerful way to pause someone who just wants to argue. It inserts purpose where there was only provocation. Why do you think that would bother me? Simple, subtle, disarming. It turns the moment inward, showing emotional clarity and self-trust. Would you speak to your boss, partner, or a close friend this way? Use sparingly. But when delivered calmly, it cuts through false authority without aggression. Each of these questions does two things. It places the responsibility for clarity back on the other person, and it sends a quiet signal to the room. I'm not playing games, I'm inviting truth. Questions disarm. Not because they're clever, but because they elevate the tone. When you ask calmly, three things happen. You move from reaction to curiosity, a sign of real emotional maturity. You regain control of the moment's rhythm. Now it's about facts, not feelings. You give the other person a mirror, not a wall. And often they stumble. Not because you pushed, but because you didn't. This isn't about winning. It's about creating a space where manipulative tactics simply stop working, where the conversation shifts from tension to clarity. The Stoic doesn't win arguments, they dissolve them. Let's say you're being unfairly blamed at work. Instead of reacting emotionally, try this. Is your concern more about what happened or about who's responsible? If they say both, respond, "Understood. I'm happy to help resolve what happened. Let's start there." You've just de-escalated the tension, redirected the focus to logic, and stayed in full command of yourself. That's not cleverness. That's leadership. Final thought for this chapter. Aggression invites resistance. Questions invite truth. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard. You don't need to explain yourself to be valid. You only need the right question and the calm to ask it without flinching. Because in a world addicted to quick reactions, the person who remains composed, curious, and intentional, that person doesn't just manage difficult people, they rise above them. Let's get one thing clear. Setting boundaries isn't rude, it's responsible. One of the most harmful myths in modern life, especially for kind, empathetic people, is this: that saying no means you're cold, distant, or selfish. But here's the Stoic truth. Saying yes to everything is how we slowly betray ourselves. You don't set boundaries to push people away. You set them to protect your peace, your time, and your purpose. And you don't need to explain it with over-apologies or emotional disclaimers. A clear boundary speaks for itself. So why do boundaries feel hard? Not because we don't understand them, but because we fear the response. What if they think I don't care? What if they get upset? What if I disappoint them? But emotional intelligence teaches us something powerful. Other people's disappointment is not your failure. Your peace is not a negotiation. In fact, the people who get most offended by your boundaries are often the ones who benefited most from you having none. Let's clarify something important. Boundaries are not barriers. They're not about cutting people out. They're about being thoughtful with your energy and your access. You don't reply instantly. That's not disrespect. That's discipline. You don't say yes to everything. That's not selfish. That's self-respect. And when someone challenges your boundary, you don't need to raise your voice. You just need to stand firm, with calm, quiet clarity. Because true boundaries don't control others. They guide you back to what matters most. You decline a hangout to rest. That's not rejection. That's self-awareness. You step away from drama-filled conversations. That's not coldness. That's clarity. People who value growth understand this. Every yes is also a no to something else. And if you keep saying yes out of guilt, you're quietly saying no to your own well-being, your rest, your focus, your peace. The Stoic doesn't say yes to avoid discomfort. They say yes only when it aligns with their values. How to set boundaries without aggression. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to sound harsh. And you don't need a long explanation. What you need is calm clarity. Let's look at 3 simple boundary scripts. I understand your request, but that doesn't work for me. Clear, respectful, not open for debate. I care about this relationship, and for that reason, I need this boundary to be respected. Kind and steady. It honors both you and the other person. I'm not available for that kind of conversation anymore. No blame, no hostility, just a quiet closing of the door. Notice something? You're not pushing anyone away. You're simply choosing not to abandon yourself to be accepted. Because boundaries aren't about controlling others. They're about guiding yourself back to what matters. Why boundaries matter? People don't just cross lines. They test them first, subtly, gradually, to see if they're real. And when you stay silent or keep bending, they assume your limits are negotiable. But when you calmly uphold your boundary, without flinching, apologizing, or justifying, you send a different message. I respect myself and I expect you to do the same. Even if they don't, you still do. And that changes everything. Final thought for this chapter. Boundaries are not walls, they're doors. Doors you open intentionally, not out of guilt, fear, or obligation. You don't owe everyone access to you. Your time is currency. Your energy is sacred. Your peace is priceless. And the more dignity you bring to your boundaries, the more clearly you show the world. I value myself, and I move from that truth. So the next time you feel pressure to say yes, pause and ask, am I choosing peace or just avoiding discomfort? Because here's the truth. Difficult people thrive where boundaries are soft, but they disappear when your self-respect becomes non-negotiable. On letting go. Letting go doesn't make you heartless. It makes you whole again. But let's be honest. Walking away from someone who drains you isn't always the hardest part. It's the guilt that follows, the second guessing, the inner courtroom replaying every moment, every memory, as if you're on trial for choosing yourself. Why? Because somewhere along the way, we were taught this lie, that putting ourselves first is selfish, that we owe loyalty even when it costs us our peace. But they're family. Maybe they'll change if I just keep trying. Here's the Stoic truth. You are not here to carry the weight of someone else's dysfunction. You are allowed to leave the fire, even if you once helped build the house. Emotional attachment does not mean emotional obligation. Yes, you cared. Yes, you showed up. And now you can walk away with grace, not guilt. Yes, you were once close. Yes, there were good moments. But here's a quiet truth. You don't owe someone permanent access to your life simply because of shared history. We often confuse connection with commitment, but you can respect the past without tolerating what the present has become. You can say, I wish them peace. I still care about their well-being, but I no longer accept this role in their chaos. That's not cold. That's clarity. That's emotional maturity. You're not abandoning them. You're returning to yourself. Every time you stay in a harmful dynamic out of guilt, you don't protect them. You lose you. You silence your intuition. You trade your peace for their comfort. And somewhere along the way, you were taught to feel bad for setting limits. But the Stoics remind us, a good life is not built on pleasing others. It's built on being at peace with yourself. And that peace begins the moment you realize detachment isn't cruelty, it's wisdom. Love, loyalty, and even grief can exist without self-abandonment. Signs. You may need to emotionally detach. You keep replaying conversations, trying to decode them. You feel relief when they're not around, and then feel guilty about it. You minimize your pain because they had it worse. You defend their behavior to others, even though you know better. You feel more responsible for their emotions than your own. That's not empathy. That's emotional entanglement. That's codependency wearing the mask of compassion. If this feels familiar, it's time to reset the lens. Because loyalty is noble, but loyalty to your own well-being is non-negotiable. How to detach with grace. 1. Stop explaining. You don't owe a presentation. The more you justify your decision, the more you hand over your power. Clarity doesn't need permission. 2. Go no contact mentally first. Even if there's distance physically, the real attachment often lives in your mind. Let go of the need to check their posts, read between the lines, or rehearse replies. Silence isn't just what you give them, it's what you give yourself. 3. Replace guilt with gratitude. Yes, you shared good moments. Yes, they shaped part of your path. Be thankful for the lessons and still walk forward. 4. Anchor into your future self. Detach not just to escape, but to rise. Every step away from them is a step closer to you. Final thought for this chapter. You are allowed to walk away, even if they're still shouting. You are allowed to move on, even if they paint you as the villain. You are allowed to choose peace, without writing an apology letter for it. The world often tells you to keep trying, keep explaining, keep fixing, as if sacrificing yourself is the mark of being good. But here's your quiet permission slip. You don't have to stay to be kind. You don't have to suffer to be loyal. You don't have to explain your healing to those committed to misunderstanding it. When you detach with dignity, you don't just reclaim your time. You remember who you are. In a noisy world, silence is rare. But there's a lie many of us inherited. That if someone disrespects you, you must respond. That if they misunderstand you, you must explain. That if they provoke you, you must defend. But here's the Stoic insight. Not everyone deserves your voice. Not every insult needs an answer. Not every battle needs your presence. Silence isn't weakness, it's discernment. The strongest minds don't waste energy reacting to noise. They reserve their energy for purpose. And sometimes, the wisest move is no move at all. So when someone throws shade, twists your words, or stirs drama to pull you in, you don't need to draft a paragraph or deliver a speech. Just breathe, stay still, move forward. Because here's the truth. You don't have to accept every invitation to chaos. Every time you react, you train them to keep provoking you. But when you disengage, when you no longer reward their dysfunction with your energy, they panic because your silence forces them to sit with a truth they're not ready for. Their power depended on your reaction. And this applies everywhere: social media, texts, group chats. Not every message needs a reply. Not every tag deserves a response. Not every fake apology earns closure. And just because you can respond doesn't mean you should. Here's something to remember. If responding costs you your peace, your clarity, or your time, it costs too much. You don't owe toxic people closure. You don't owe manipulators a final conversation. You don't owe bullies the comfort of knowing they got to you. What you owe is your peace of mind, nothing more. Silence, when rooted in self-respect, is not avoidance. It's a boundary. There's a quiet difference between hiding and rising. Avoidance is fear. Silence, when chosen from a place of inner strength, is wisdom. It says, I no longer need to prove anything here. Picture this. Someone throws a jab. You pause. You meet their eyes. And you say nothing. Not because you couldn't respond. Not because you lacked the words. But because you've outgrown the need to win battles that aren't worth fighting. And in that stillness, everyone learns something. You're not here to play their game. You cannot be rattled. You're not available for nonsense. A quiet reminder. Every word you speak is an investment. Spend it wisely. Your attention is currency. And toxic people often try to spend it for you. So the next time someone tries to bait you into explaining, defending, or reacting, ask yourself, does this move me forward? Or does it pull me backward? If it doesn't align with your peace, purpose, or growth, choose silence. Let your absence speak. Let your energy go elsewhere. Because sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Now let's get clear on this truth. You cannot change someone who doesn't want to change. It doesn't matter how sincere your love is, how wise your words are, or how clear the truth is. If someone is committed to staying the same, your efforts won't move them. And the more you try, the more you delay your own healing. Here's the Stoic shift. Your power is not in changing them. It's in deciding how much of yourself you're willing to give to their chaos. The trap for empathic people is subtle. You see the best in others. You believe, maybe if I explain it better, maybe this time they'll understand. So you stay. You overextend. You offer one more chance. Again. But beneath it all, there's a quiet knowing. This isn't helping them evolve. It's just helping them stay the same, while you carry the weight of their resistance. That's not compassion. That's emotional entanglement. That's codependency wrapped in hope. Mindset is not something you can install in someone else. It's not a download. It's not a gift. It's a decision, a discipline, a choice they must make for themselves. So if someone continues to blame, deflect, reject growth, or attack progress, it's not your role to convince them. It's your role to recognize. This is not mine to carry anymore. Stop repeating the lesson to someone committed to misunderstanding it, not out of resentment, but out of respect for your time, your heart, your peace, and your path forward. Here's a quiet but freeing truth. Some people don't lack understanding. They lack the willingness to grow. You've been honest. You've extended grace. You've tried to meet them where they are. But they still twist your words, dismiss your growth, accuse you of thinking you're better. The truth is, they're not seeking clarity. They're trying to maintain control. And no matter how thoughtful or sincere you are, They'll only hear what fits their comfort zone. That isn't a reflection of your failure. It's a reflection of their filter. Self-mastery begins when rescue missions end. You are not responsible for another person's inner work. You're not their therapist. You're not their savior. You are the guardian of your own peace. And the moment you stop trying to reshape someone else's mindset, you reclaim the energy to fortify your own. You stop asking, "Why won't they listen? What more can I say? How can I make them see?" And instead, you begin asking, "What within me needs healing, so I no longer seek validation in these patterns? How can I reinforce my boundaries so I stop tolerating emotional chaos? Where am I still hoping they'll change, instead of changing the way I show up?" This is how emotional resilience is built, layer by layer, question by question, choice by grounded choice. Here's a gentle but firm reminder. You can love someone and still walk away. You can forgive someone and still not let them back in. You can understand someone's pain and still choose not to carry it for them. You are not born to fix people. You were born to grow, beyond what breaks you. So stop pouring your light into cups that only cut your hands. Stop measuring your worth by how much hurt you can hold for someone else. You cannot rewrite their story, but you can start writing the next chapter of yours, one where your peace is no longer optional. In a chaotic world, the most powerful presence in the room isn't the loudest voice, it's the calm one. Because calm doesn't mean nothing touches you. It means you've learned to respond with clarity instead of reacting from chaos. When they insult you, you breathe. When they provoke, you pause. When they try to pull you off center, you stay grounded. Not because you don't feel, but because you've seen this before, and you've outgrown the need to dance with dysfunction. This isn't suppression, it's discipline. It's wisdom. It's the posture of someone who knows how to lead themselves. As Seneca said, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The one who masters their inner world doesn't need to control the external one, because they already hold the advantage. Let's be honest. Rage isn't power. Defensiveness isn't strength. Explaining yourself to someone who only wants a reaction isn't clarity. It's emotional surrender. It's giving your energy to someone who knows exactly how to pull your strings. Every time you lose your calm, you lose the one thing you're here to protect, your peace. And without peace, you're not responding. You're reacting. Not a philosopher, not a leader, just another person trapped in the cycle. Calm doesn't mean passive. It means you choose your moments. You don't speak just to be heard. You speak when it matters. You don't act just because you're triggered. You act when it aligns with your values. You don't argue to win. You rise above, because you've already won the moment you stop needing to prove it. Remain silent, not because you're defeated, but because you've already won by mastering your emotions. This is the calm of a commander, the clarity of someone who doesn't need to prove anything, because their presence speaks louder than any reaction ever could. Peace isn't a destination to reach. It's the battlefield itself. Many imagine peace as some quiet mountain far away. But real peace is forged right here, in the heat of emotional storms, when you choose again and again to rise above. Every time you keep your voice steady while others shout. Every time you walk away instead of retaliating. Every time you choose self-respect over reaction, you are practicing stoic warfare. You are showing that calm is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. Here's the final thought for this chapter. You don't win by overpowering others. You win by never letting them overpower you. Your emotions belong to you. Your peace belongs to you. Your presence belongs to you. No insult, no argument, no toxic person has the right to take that away. Let them scream. Let them spiral. Let them wonder why you remain unshaken. Because the truth is simple. Your calm disturbs their chaos. Your silence exposes their noise. Your peace is what they can never touch. Let them talk. Let them twist. Let them doubt. From this moment forward, you live for your peace, your purpose, your discipline, your inner empire. The truth is, you don't defeat difficult people by confronting them. You defeat them by no longer being affected by them. You win by walking away with your head held high and your soul intact. You win by choosing self-mastery over self-destruction. You win by becoming someone they can no longer reach, not even with their chaos. So the next time someone tries to bait you, smile quietly, walk away with calm in your eyes and fire in your mission. Because you don't control them, but you always control yourself. And that is power no one can ever take from you. If this resonated with you, don't stop here. Subscribe and follow this channel for more grounded Stoic wisdom to sharpen your mind, fortify your boundaries, and build a life no chaos can invade. Drop a comment below. What's one lesson from this video you'll start applying today? Stoic Mindset Mastery. Where minds grow sharper, not softer. Where calm isn't passive, but weaponized. And where you rise not louder, but wiser. Let's keep building.